All right, so we've done this video, we've done Outliers, and it's a killer book. Check out the original video. But I wanted to add just a little bit of emphasis on some stories from the book that really kind of like shook me up a little bit and have kind of sort of changed the way I think about a lot of things. And it's something that I didn't really think about initially, but these fundamental principles I think are some of even bigger outputs, and they've really changed my line of thinking. And it's just something I want to get out there. You know, he talks about individuals and specifically like math students, kids in high school, and you know why it is that certain demographics of people perform better than others, you know, based off where they're from, the languages that they learn, and really looking at, you know, how is it that maybe this one language, you know, like he looks at, you know, Koreans and says, wow, you know, their language is better suited for numbers. And that's one of the fundamental reasons that they do better, is it's just quicker to say numbers. They can fit numbers in a shorter amount of time. And it was really, really interesting to see that. Like, it's just because of their background and a very, very minor, you know, aspect of their lives as they grew up, really just changed the way that they perform as a nation, you know, in competitions in that regard. And at the same time, there was something really interesting where there was that language aspect, and at the same time it was like personal effort and dedication. And one thing he showed that was just insane was like they had this really big math test, and the people that went there, they had a test before the test, which was like 150 questions, I think, and it was just about their life and where they were, like a bunch of questions about their friends, their family, and it was meant to be a tedious test that was just like very, like a boring survey. And it was really interesting because after that boring survey, that long boring survey, they took the test. And the thing was, not everybody finished that survey, right? So they would look at how many questions they answered out of that super long survey, and then they would look at how they did on the math test afterwards. And freaking craziest thing, like it's just profound. The tests on that pre-test survey or the results, the scores, and the scores on the actual math test were like indistinguishably the same. Like, it's not like one predicted the other, like they were the same score. The people that had the endurance on the survey had this endurance on the test. And that mentality of you put in the work and you're going to get the results. Literally the only difference between people that did well and didn't do well was the work ethic. And he dives into this so much more in this book. Killer stuff. And there was this one thing where it's like a woman spent like 20 minutes trying to solve a math problem. And, you know, it was something that she just didn't have. It was a long time ago. She didn't remember it. And looking at that dedication and saying, this is the kind of perseverance that students need to have to find real success in the classroom. And looking at, you know, how the average student looks at a problem and maybe looks at a math problem after 20 seconds is what they found. They would just give up, look it up, try to, you know, look at other answers, stuff like that. And they weren't really going through the process and learning it, that dedication. And with those lower levels of dedication, you can only expect that they would have worse test performance. It was crazy insights because it was exactly, you know, it was true, it was killer. And so it makes you think, like, you can apply your time, energy, and expertise into any field. You know, it doesn't have to be mathematics that you want. And if you put the work in and you go hard on that, you're going to get the results. And it was just a profound cross-sectional application where all of a sudden it's showing you exactly how the work you put in is going to really form those results, because you can dedicate yourself to anything you want, and the certain niche that you dedicate yourself into, that niche is going to grow into so much more if you put the work in, so that you're absolutely crushing it because you know exactly what you want to do, and you go and you freaking do it. And it was looking at that application in mathematics and really applying it to cross sections and fields. And that's something I think you get a lot from this book, are some really insane overarching life principles of just taking yourself to the next level and absolutely crushing it personally and professionally, so that you just kill it. It's cool. It's crazy stuff. You know, and it reminds me a lot of one of these other stories he says, and I don't want to give away too much of this book, but honestly, there is so much content in this book. I feel like I can't do it justice. You know, they were looking at like the Hatfield-McCoys and some other feudalist relations and how people were super mad at each other in the mountains. And then this guy, he goes into the background of where these people came from and where their ancestors are from, and like how their ancestors grew up on farms with livestock instead of crops, and how they were territorial because they had to protect their livestock. And then he expands that territory into, here's how these people's ancestors came over to America into these valley civilizations where they're forming they're mimicking their lifestyle, and it determined their whole life of gang violence and like literally killing each other back and forth in a rivalry. And there was this one immensely profound scene where a guy, you know, he goes and he gets shot in the middle of a town because the rival family, from their history of anxiety and anger and defense, he just shoots him, and because he got pissed off, and he goes home with his mom bleeding, and he is, you know, near death, and his mom says, why don't you just die like your brother? And then he says, okay, he just sits on the floor and freaking dies. It was insane. It was like looking at how the backgrounds and influence around your life can really create a profound physical and immediate impact in your performance and lifestyle, to the extent that this man literally died because his mom told him to die, because his brother died, because his brother was part of the feud that was established decades and decades ago. And looking at the history, I mean, this book is freaking crazy, man. Like, oh my God. There is, oh man. And like, it just mimics this guy, Malcolm Gladwell. He crushed it. He absolutely killed it. I can't recommend it enough. There's a link below. There was this, like, they're looking at farmers, they're looking at everyone, man. And with different ethnicities and races. Like, he was talking about how rice farmers, and this is one theme, if you don't get anything else from this video, there was one line that just profoundly changed the way I look at a whole lot of my life and really reinstated, you know, I wake up at 4 every single day. It really, really pushed me to continue doing what I do. And the line was, a man can't wake up 360 days a year before dawn and fail to make his family wealthy. And that was just crazy. He was talking about rice farmers, because rice farmers, unlike like Eastern wheat farmers, they only had to work maybe a couple hours a day, especially with feudalism at the time. This was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. These rice farmers, you know, the work that they did, and that was another big thing, right, is that the work you do is directly proportional to the results that you achieve in the marketplace. So you can see an association between effort, work, and results, profit, especially in a capitalist economy. And he was looking at rice farmers, because the rice farmers, they had so immensely much more work to do than most other farmers. They were literally working like from when they woke up to when they went to bed to cultivate more rice than anyone else and grow more wealth, since rice was wealth in that society, and using that as an outlook on themselves, so that they have these very, very specific planning styles where they have to be so careful and perfect on it, where the weeds get pulled out, everything has a clay pot, they seed it all, they water it perfectly, and if anything goes wrong, they can have profound failures. So there's this massive time commitment of the rice farmers who have to be there every single day cultivating and just crushing their yields in their crop, so that they have the most profound results in the marketplace, better than everyone else. And you know, he goes through it and he says, well, let's think about why maybe these guys are more successful than their other counterparts who were only working a couple hours a day. These guys had so much more discipline and commitment in their life to their career and what they were doing with themselves, that they had these extremely profound results where they would eat like rice for every meal of the day, and they would do it so that they could go and push themselves harder, so that they could produce that extra income, that extra little bit in the marketplace, so that they're absolutely crushing it because they put the time in every single day. And it wraps everything up whole fold with the students who all they had to do to get a better grade was work harder. And it's like, duh, right? But like, you don't think about that. And it's like this introspective insight into life where, oh my God, they have such an entirely unique output of, I want to crush it, I'm going to do it. And they use that as an inspiration to go and bring the value that they want in the marketplace, so that their dedication turns into a passion, turns into a growing obsession, turns into results, turns into success, turns into meeting goals, turns into accomplishing it over time, because they have the work ethic. That was another really big thing, like with these different, you know, groups of people, like looking directly in this book, and with a lot of the people. If you didn't see the original video on this book, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, we talk a little bit more about the very specific personal people that Malcolm goes through, and there were just so many examples of uber successful individuals who absolutely crushed it. He breaks down their entire lives, what they do, how they do it, where their background's from. I talk a little bit about that in my other video. Check it out. It's the YouTube video. It's just my review on this book. But these were just a couple extra stories from it that I hope you guys find valuable, and I think are really freaking cool, and have really changed a lot of my insights. I can't recommend this book. This book is like literally, I was at a track meet, and like I ran the 100 relay, and I ran the 300 hurdles, and I mean, I crushed it. I had an amazing time. I loved it. And after the events, you know, I like passed out. Not really, but like after I, you know, cooled down and stuff, we were doing, you know, individual cool downs where you just run laps. And like, I swear, guys, I was the only idiot out there, the only person dumb enough to do this. But I was literally reading a book while I ran, because this book is freaking insane. There's so much effort and work that's gone into this, and it shows. It really does show. A couple people took a picture of me. They were like, they thought it was for school, and they said, when you have a track meet but a book report's due the next day. Like, this book is killer. It's amazing. Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. See ya.